If you've been dealing with IBS for a while now, you know this feeling all too well. You're about to leave the house and suddenly your gut starts churning. Or you're at a restaurant and you're looking at the menu and then panic sets in. What if this triggers a flare? What if I can't find the bathroom in time? What if I have an accident? Now here's the thing, this isn't just in your head. Your anxiety and your gut symptoms are actually connected in a very real, very physical way through something called the gut-brain axis. And today, I want to show you why this happens and more importantly, what you can do about it. When I first started our gut health program back in 2019, I thought it was all about the nutrition. You know, the low FODMAP diet, identifying food triggers, reducing inflammation, and that's what I focused on. But then something surprising happened. We added a mindset coach to our team, Amy, and she still works with us today. And we started asking clients at the end of the program, hey, what was the most valuable part for you? And of course, I was expecting them to say, you know, the nutrition or the meal plans, working with the dietitians. But more than half of them said, Amy, the mindset work, the anxiety management, regulating the nervous system. And that's when I realized you can't actually fix IBS properly with diet alone. So in this video, we're going to walk you through why anxiety shows up with IBS in the first place, the anxiety IBS cycle, how to retrain your nervous system, how to change the fear-based story you're telling yourself, building safety around food, and why self-compassion isn't just nice to have. Now, just to introduce myself, my name is Joe Leach. I'm a qualified dietitian and founder of Diet vs. Disease, one of the world's largest online gut health clinics. And today we're diving deep into IBS anxiety with our head mindset coach, Jay Hayes. Now, Jay has degrees in psychology and social work. She's trained in clinical hypnotherapy, EMDR, gut-directed protocols, and she's helped over 1,000 of our clients break free from the anxiety IBS cycle. So let's get into it. So before we jump into the training with Jay, let me set the stage here. If you have IBS, there's a good chance you also deal with anxiety around your symptoms, right? And it's not because you're weak or overly sensitive or making it up. It's because of something called visceral hypersensitivity, okay? Which basically means your gut's alarm system is turned up way too high. Most people don't feel normal digestion happening. You know, food moves through, nutrients are absorbed, gas gets created, stool is formed, everything just kind of happens. But when you have IBS, those normal sensations can feel like alarm bells. A little bit of gas feels like a crisis, some bloating, it's panic mode. Your pain and discomfort is real. It's physiological, it's not in your head. But here's where it gets tricky. When you're anxious, you become hyper aware of every little sensation in your gut and you feel like you have to act on them. And those sensations trigger more anxiety, which makes you pay even more attention to your gut. And you know, around and round it goes. This is the anxiety IBS cycle. And it keeps people trapped for years, sometimes decades. All right, so now you understand why anxiety shows up with IBS. Let's talk about what we can actually do about it. Now, I sat down with Jay for a special training on this exact topic, and she walked through the science, the nervous system, and the practical tools that actually work, that are proven to work. Now, let me hand it over to Jay, and then I'll come back to break it down for you.
So the reason why anxiety shows up in IBS is most of you should probably be aware now of that gut-brain communication. So the bidirectional gut-brain axis, it's constantly communicating. IBS involves something called visceral hypersensitivity. Some of you are going to be familiar with that. And that's your gut's alarm system when it's turned up too high. So in clinical terms, this includes visceral hypoalgesia, big word, but I'm going to explain it, which is just an exaggerated pain response to stimuli. And sometimes allodynia, where sensations that aren't normally painful start to become painful for you. And so what this means practically is that normal digestion processes that most people wouldn't notice can trigger significant discomfort for you if you struggle or suffer from IBS. Your pain is real. Okay, a lot of the time people had old messages, it's all in your head, doesn't make it any easier. The pain is real and it is physiological. It's not something that you're imagining. It this isn't actually caused by anxiety, but here is what happens. When we're anxious, we become more tuned into the gut sensations. We become more hyper aware. And those sensations themselves can then trigger more anxiety. So your gut sends signals up to the brain, and your brain sends signals back down to your gut in this two-way street. And this isn't your fault. It's not a personal failing. It's how the nervous system has learned to respond.
Okay, so let's break that down. What Jay just explained is that IBS comes with something called visceral hypersensitivity. This is your nervous system responding to real sensations in a heightened way. Okay, the anxiety fuels this. Your gut sends signals up to your brain through the vagus nerve, and your brain sends signals back down to your gut. It's this constant two-way conversation. And over time, your nervous system has learned to respond in a heightened way to this. Now, it's not your fault, it's not a personal failing, but that brings up a really important question I had. A lot of people blame themselves for feeling anxious about their gut. So how much of this is actually within their control, and how much of it is just biology doing its thing? So let's go back to Jay to hear her answer.
I honestly believe, as you know, and as most people may be aware here, I always start my work by doing a really sort of involved biopsychosocial assessment. And what I found over working in this cohort, probably over 5 years, is that there is generally some level of trauma early on. People sometimes don't see it as that because it's just how it was back in the day. However, generally there is some trauma component, okay? Or there is some level of dysregulation where you've been in chronic stress, chronic trauma that can exacerbate symptoms. What we also know is that there is links here within the bloodline as well, okay? So I will generally always ask, did mum and dad have a funny gut or anything like that, or your sisters and brothers? So there is genetic components to gut issues, and if we don't see it where there was gut issues in the family, then generally we see it in the mental health side, okay? So there was something there. So we're all predisposed to something when we come into this world, and then it's our own lived experience that can express it. So a lot of the time it's already in the bloodline and there was a predisposition to it, and then it could be that you went through something stressful, something that you may not have known or thought of as traumatic that can sometimes start it. For some people, it starts in teenage years when there was hormonal differences. It's a lot of different reasons. And as we know, sometimes it can start by having food poisoning as well. So there can be sort of those organic reasons as well. But generally, from what I see, there is a genetic predisposition to gut issues, whether it's with the gut or with mental health. And then, it's around then how you respond to it, right? Because a lot of the time people don't talk about poo, they don't talk about the toilet, they don't talk about this as well. And so then what can happen, and I'll talk to this in a moment, is there can be that shame or embarrassment. So we sort of keep it to ourselves. So we're like, oh, what's happening here? And so what we also see is that people go for a long time before they seek help. Then when they seek help, unfortunately, a lot of the time that help is not supportive. People are told it's in their head, or they go for scopes and they're saying there's nothing wrong with you. And so we then see a lot of rejection that can come from the medical field. And so that can also exacerbate that anxiety as well, when you're not feeling safe, when you're not feeling heard, when you don't know what's causing it. You don't know what it is. We feel hopeless, helpless. A lot of the time people come into the program and I say, at the end, you're going to start to feel more empowered. You're going to start to feel more in control, because you're going to start to get an understanding of, oh, okay, that was probably a food trigger, or that was a stressful moment. And you can start to put the pieces together and it starts to become more empowering. Did I answer your question, or I just waffled along? I could talk about this for a long time.
Sure. The trauma part. So when I was new to this, I always think of trauma as like PTSD, something major. That's what trauma is, but that's not the case, is it? What's an example of like...
No, trauma is subjective, okay? No one can actually tell you what was traumatic in your history or not. If you went through something and you did not feel like you had the skills to handle that situation, and it felt too much and it was hard, traumatic, it was traumatic. No one else can tell you that. As I said, there can be small T traumas, there can be big T traumas. We all sort of went through a collective trauma with COVID. And so it is very individual. And I think that's why sometimes it's very nuanced, because something that, say, you and I went through together, Joe, at the same time, I might have been like, that was traumatic for me. It was outside of my realm of coping. It felt so heavy to me. And you went through it and was like, oh, that was okay. Completely, different things. And this is also why some people come out of services, right, and jobs, and people are like, oh yeah, they served 30 years in the police force and they're okay. Some people serve 2 years, they come out and they're on PTSD leave. It's subjective, and it can be cumulative as well. So what some of the newest research is saying as well is that the sort of big T PTSD sort of traumas, sometimes actually cumulative little t traumas can be more detrimental than those bigger T traumas. So that's still also emerging as well.
So it could be something small and almost seemingly uneventful, but that you're exposed to regularly every day at home, for example, some sort of relationship at home, something which could be a little T trauma that has a big impact.
Also sets you over the edge, if you will. Sometimes people come in and go, I don't understand. We work with sometimes, big execs, and, they're like, this thing happened and I was a wreck and it undone me, but I've survived all of this. Why was it this thing? And if you also think about it as an accumulation of dysregulation on your nervous system, we're humans, if we don't take a break, at some point the body's going to take it for us. And this is where we start to see these conditions come out sometimes, is when there's not been a break and we've continued to go through. And so if you don't do it, your body's going to do it for you. What you're talking about is what we see very regularly as well. And people sort of struggle to make sense of it when they come into the program. And then it's through that mindset education that they're like, oh, okay.
Okay, so here's the bottom line. There's often a genetic component to IBS. It can run in families, and trauma, which doesn't have to be something huge. It can be, cumulative stress, medical dismissal, or even just living with symptoms for years without answers. Each of these can dysregulate your nervous system. Here's the good news. Your nervous system learned to respond this way, which means it can also learn a new way to respond. So let's talk about how we actually retrain it and how we do it with all of our clients. It's called nervous system regulation, which Jay will teach you now.
So now we're going to be looking at a few steps into how to regulate your nervous system as well. The first step is teaching your body safety again through nervous system regulation. And as I said, all of our mindset team members are trained in this now, and it is perfection with our cohort. The research shows that daily calming practices, even for 10 to 20 minutes, keeps the nervous system more balanced overall. So I want to emphasize here that gut-directed hypnotherapy specifically has the strongest evidence for IBS symptom relief or reduction. So when you come into the program, you have access to Nerva. You also have access to my library, which has been built over the last 4 years, which has been specifically targeted for things that I've seen within the cohort. So while it can be complementary, it can be very different to Nerva as well. So the way I want you to sort of look at this is thinking about this nervous system regulation like you would brushing your teeth. You don't just do it when there's a problem. You are doing this daily to prevent something from happening. So when you're establishing the practice, trying to do it daily, sort of trying to do it daily as opposed to just waiting until there's a big anxious period. If you are going through something that's quite heightened, then trying to go twice daily within that practice, maybe once when you wake up and once when you go to bed. So there's different things here as well. And for some people that are like, I do not like meditation, it's not my thing, I get it. It's okay. Your nervous system is as individual as your fingerprints. So while I do say that, I still want you to try meditation, okay? Because it is like a muscle. Sometimes you do need to practice it before it starts to get better. I was certainly one of those people that was like, my brain is not going to be quiet. And I started with 10 minutes and I would build it up. And what happened was I was like, oh, it's not about getting it perfect every time. It's not about being silent the whole time. Sometimes your mind's going to drift and that's okay. But what starts to happen is you start to notice the benefit of it. Then you start to be more likely to lean into it. Okay. But again, if you try it and it's really not for you, I want to go through other evidence-based things here. So obviously diaphragmatic breathing, beautiful breath work. So we're doing, it can be the 4-7-8 technique. So you're breathing in, you're holding, you're breathing out again. And sometimes that breath work can help if you went on the breath out, you're imagining you're breathing out into a straw. That can sometimes be better when you're trying to slow that exhale out. If you don't like the diaphragmatic breathing, you could try any breathing. There's mountain breathing, there's square breathing, there's so many different ones, but diaphragmatic breathing is obviously a part of the evidence here. The gut-directed hypnotherapy, that's level A. Progressive muscle relaxation, if you're someone that really, really struggles to do that imagery, then you are just tensing up the body as you go along. A really complementary meditation style, if that is something that you like, is yoga nidra. Again, because you're putting your focus on your body parts. So some people where they don't necessarily like the imagery, or if you have sort of trouble with imagery, if you have aphantasia where you actually can't imagine, you may want to go with like the progressive muscle relaxation or the yoga nidra type scripts. And as I said, what we're aiming for here is daily practice instead of the emergency use only. Not to say it's not going to be great in emergency, but you really want to start to flex that muscle. Because again, when you're dysregulated, you're going to lean into what you've always done. So if you haven't actually practiced this, it's not going to come to the front of your mind when you're going through a period where you're dysregulated. It's not going to be the first thing you go to because you're shut off from your prefrontal cortex. But if you've started practicing it and you're dysregulated, then you're like, oh, okay, I know this is going to help me. And you're going to be more likely to lean into it. So consistency builds resilience over time.
Can I add? So the diaphragmatic breathing, it's like an epidemic. If people don't do this and they don't know how, if you think about a child or even a baby and how they breathe, the stomach really expands and then contracts almost like a balloon. That's the diaphragm is a muscle, okay, underneath the lungs, but kind of like, I don't know if you can see here, but just underneath the chest muscles, underneath the lungs, but above sort of your stomach and your gut. And when we breathe in, it should really expand, almost like a big bloated belly, and then contract. And that's something that I lost the skill or the ability to do that naturally. I don't know when, but only realized it when when I go to the gym and I have to lift and hold weights overhead. And then, so when you even if you just raise your arms over your head and keep them there, really trying to like push to the ceiling and as though you were trying to push the ceiling, and then try to take deep breaths. But when you breathe in, your stomach and your diaphragm need to expand, and when you breathe out, they need to contract as though you were sucking in, but you're breathing out. It's almost the opposite of what we started to do. And so that is something that you could try now or definitely try after this, but holding your hands above your head and breathing. When you breathe in, your stomach should expand, and when you breathe out, it should contract. This is diaphragmatic breathing, and we know how impactful it is on vagus nerve sensitivity. And then onto just the toothbrush analogy I like that you used, Jay. In terms of like building habits, it needs to be, you don't really think about like, oh, I need to brush my teeth. You just kind of do it. But when you're a child, who didn't like brushing their teeth? Because I didn't. I remember that it would be like, mom tells me, brush your teeth before you go to bed. And I'd be like, well, I don't want to. And then it would like be this big thing and I would make a scene and then I would brush my teeth and go to bed. And then the next day, but the same thing, right? Did you brush your teeth? No, I don't want to. Same thing over and over. But now, since I was a teenager or whatever, do I brush my teeth? Yes. It's just something that I do. No one has to nag me to do it. And it can be the same with this, but you have to be consistent in the beginning, even if it doesn't come naturally.
Yeah, that's a great point, Joe, as well. And what I also talk to people about is when they're struggling to perhaps implement the habit is to stack it on top of something that you're already doing. The stacking analogy goes well for anyone that's in the program because that's something you've got to learn when you're going through the food thing. So I always say stack the meditation or breath work onto something that you already do. Mine is when I go to bed because I'm like, that's easy for me to listen to when I'm going to bed. Breath work, I usually do that in between my clients. clients, I will get up and I will like shake my body all out, or I'll do some breath work just for 30 seconds after every client. But trying to stack it to something that you already do. It could be even when you're brushing your teeth, after you brush your teeth, you do 5 rounds, just try and stack it to something so that it starts to build as a habit.
All right, so here's what Jay just covered. Nervous system regulation is like brushing your teeth. You have to do it daily to prevent problems, not just when there's a crisis, right? So the research shows that just 10 to 20 minutes a day of calming practices can keep your nervous system balanced. And gut-directed hypnotherapy specifically has the strongest evidence for reducing IBS symptoms. But there are other options too, right? Diaphragmatic breathing that we talked about, progressive muscle relaxation, even yoga nidra if traditional meditation isn't your thing. The key is consistency. You're training your nervous system to respond differently, and that takes practice. Jay mentioned habit stacking, like doing your breathing exercises right after you brush your teeth or before you go to bed. So attach it to something you already do, and it becomes much more automatic. But here's the question a lot of people have. How long does it realistically take to retrain the nervous system once you're actually consistent with these practices? Let's go back to Jay.
When you do sort of a full nervous system education, generally we're talking around 6 weeks to start to see what we call a bioplasticity reset to occur. So obviously what we've known for years is that the brain is capable of great change, which is neuroplasticity, but so is your nervous system, and it's bioplasticity. So as you start to understand what your body is doing, okay, when you are in your fight or flight, when you're in what we call your ventral vagal, which is your homeostasis, your norm, your happy place, or what it does when you're in that sort of functional collapse, the dorsal vagal. When you start to recognize your body's language and your brain and your body start communicating and working together, and you notice when you're dysregulated, you lean into somatic activities, breath work, guided meditation being one of them, to regulate yourself. So as you start to sort of work with yourself during the day, this is where we start to see what we call a widening of the window of tolerance. So in 6 weeks, something that would have happened that you're like, oh, that would have been a big deal. You're like, oh, I handled that better. It's incremental work. It's not like you wake up tomorrow and there's no anxiety ever again. There's no magic pill for that. But what happens is you start to handle things better, and you're like, oh, I didn't have anxiety before that medical appointment, or that happened and I didn't even give it a second thought. I always encourage clients to be really reflective too when they're doing this work. Like, those are big wins. Pat yourself on the back. It's indicative that you're starting to regulate your nervous system, tone your vagus nerve, and then start to widen that window of tolerance.
Now, if you're sitting here thinking, okay, this makes sense, but how do I actually implement all of this? It's a lot. That's exactly what we help people with inside our program. You get a dietitian who walks you through the food components step by step, a mindset coach who teaches you these nervous system regulation techniques and helps you break those thought patterns. So it's not just information, it's implementation that we provide. If you want to see if our program is a fit for you, check the first link in the description or comment Sure Pathway, and we'll send you all the details. And if you want a popular downloadable resource we have on overcoming this issue, the second link in the video description has our IBS Think This, Not That list. You can download and print it and put it on your fridge. So regulating your nervous system is step 1 in overcoming IBS anxiety, or anxiety IBS. It goes both ways. But there's another piece of this puzzle, and it's just as important. You need to start to transition away from fear-based thinking, from negative thought traps, and that story you're telling yourself about your gut symptoms. So let me hand it back to Jay to explain this in more detail and give you some examples.
The fear-based thinking in IBS has really specific patterns, like I've just spoken to here. It sounds like, what if this meal ruins my day? Or you've asked for low FODMAP and then you're tasting it and you're like, oh, I don't think this is low FODMAP. The pain means something seriously wrong with me. Those thoughts are really powerful triggers for your nervous system. We use cognitive behavioral therapy techniques specifically adapted for IBS. Reframing means shifting, as I said, from this is dangerous to this is uncomfortable, but it's not dangerous. Cognitive diffusion is one of my favorite skills to teach people. It's a part of acceptance and commitment therapy. So cognitive diffusion helps you see that your thoughts are just thoughts. They're not facts. Okay, we don't want to embody them. Before we sort of examine what the thoughts are, I say it's like a black cloud above your head and you're just acting and embodying like that's actually the truth. We want to step away. We want to put that cloud in front of us and put it in a circle, separate, and notice what that is. I notice I'm having that thought. I notice that that's what I'm saying to myself. So that diffusion, as I said, helps you to see a lot of the thoughts that you have in your mind are not thoughts, are just thoughts, they're not facts. And interoception exposure means gradually learning through experience that gut sensations, while they're uncomfortable, aren't actually threatening. So we pair these with anchoring rituals as well. So small calming practices before eating. So you might do your diaphragmatic breathing before eating, that start to signal that safety to your body. It starts to signal safety to the nervous system. We will teach you a whole bunch of different things through the program, but one of the things I really love is all of these that I've said here, but making that mealtime special again. Don't rush your food. Eat in a different place if it's got a bad association. Light a candle. Do your breathing before the meal. Some people I say, just be grateful for everything and everyone that brought that meal to your table, so your system's so relaxed when you're starting to eat, which is obviously going to really aid with digestion as well.
So diffusion is a really interesting concept.
Mm-hmm.
What's an example of how someone might use that in a situation? Is that like what you just said, like dining in a different area of the house or something where maybe they won't associate, I don't know, a previous experience, or can you go into that?
Honestly, the cognitive diffusion helps with any negative thinking, Joe. Like if you find yourself in a moment where you're feeling very overwhelmed, when you're feeling that you're thinking really negative things, the first step I usually say to people is, what are you believing to be true, or what's the story that you're telling yourself? Okay. So if you are prone to cognitive distortions, negative thinking traps, like I'm a big catastrophizer, I can go from like 0 to 100 right away. One of my cognitive diffusion techniques is I talk to my brain and I go, oh, amazing. Catastrophes come to visit my brain. What are we believing to be true today? And because I can laugh about it, I'm diffusing from it. So I'm not embodying it. Before I did that, the negative thinking's there and my body's already responding to that negative thinking like it was a fact, right? So saying like, what's a technique? I'm cooking lunch. I'm doing a Sunday lunch for people today. And like, if I was a real worrywart around that, I might be thinking like, oh my gosh, I hope everything's okay with the chicken. I hope no one gets food poisoning. I hope everyone's okay. I hope they're not going to judge my house, fusing with it all. And then when you're stepping away from it, my body is feeling rushed, right? And fusing with that tightness. But when I step away and I'm like, oh, I'm noticing I'm having that thought, noticing that, I can let that go. That's not a fact. It's just a thought that I'm having and it's actually not true. So it's diffusing from anything negative is what I say. And you can really catch it when you're either ruminating on something or when you're having a really big reaction to something and you're just pausing and going, okay, well, hold on here. The first step I always say is, what are you believing to be true? Or what's the story you're telling yourself right now? And when you start to do that, that's when we can start to challenge it in multiple different ways. Cognitive diffusion is one of them.
Okay. Yeah. So, I'm noticing I'm having an anxious thought rather than I'm an anxious person or I'm anxious.
Yeah, don't claim it. Absolutely. There's a lot of people that go, oh, I am my anxiety. I am my IBS. You are not your IBS. You are not your anxiety. I come from lived experience with quite severe social anxiety, but I am Jay, and I notice sometimes that comes up. So sometimes the analogy that can be helpful is using your mind is like a boat, right? Or a house, and the things that come in is like house guests. So for some people, I say, name the anxiety, give it a name. Some people go, not today, Brian. We are not doing that today. If you know where your brain goes, like black and white thinking, what are the other ones? Like catastrophizing, discounting the positive, a whole bunch of different ones. But if you know where your brain goes, give it a name, because that's going to be really easy to be able to start to zoom out. If humor works for you, then name it. Sing the fear out loud. Sometimes I'll sing it out loud and it sounds ridiculous and it makes me laugh. When I'm laughing, I'm not believing the thought, right? I'm diffused from it. So there's a bunch of different techniques to try.
Mm-hmm. Okay, are you going to give us an example of the singing out loud?
I am not going to subject you to that, no.
Okay, let's move on.
Now, I couldn't persuade her to sing a song for us, unfortunately, but what she just explained is that a lot of IBS anxiety comes from the automatic thoughts we have when symptoms show up. So thoughts like, this is dangerous, I can't handle this, something's seriously wrong with me. And here's the thing, their thoughts are not facts. Just because you think something doesn't make it true. So when you notice that anxious thoughts creep in, you can pause and reframe it. This is uncomfortable, but it's not dangerous. I can handle discomfort and still engage with my life. My gut is sensitive and not broken. And this isn't like toxic positivity. This isn't pretending everything's fine. It's cognitive diffusion that she mentioned. Learning to step back from your thoughts and recognize them as just thoughts and not reality. And when you start doing this consistently, something shifts. You stop living in constant fear of your gut. You start feeling more empowered and more in control. Now, one of the biggest sources of anxiety for people with IBS is obviously food. You can be scared to eat, you're scared to try new things, you're scared of triggering a flare, and I get it. Food is one of the most common triggers, but here's what happens when that fear takes over. You start restricting more and more foods, not because they actually trigger symptoms, but because you're afraid they might. And that fear starts to outweigh the actual risk.
So what we want to also do, step 3 is building safety around food. Food anxiety is one of the biggest challenges that we see with IBS, sort of right up there with toilet and bathroom anxiety. And here's what's really important to understand. While some foods may genuinely trigger symptoms for you, food fear often actually exceeds the actual risk, okay? The saying I like to remind people of here is what we resist persists. If you have a fear of dogs, okay, and you don't go anywhere near dogs, that fear of you not being exposed to it grows bigger and bigger and bigger, okay? Same with people at the beach, and it's the same with food. If you continue to resist it, the fear starts to actually outweigh the actual risk here. What happens is people start restricting more and more foods, and we see that a lot of the time. I don't talk a lot to the food side, but obviously I see this a lot with clients working with the dietitians. So what happens, as I said, is we restrict more and more based on the fear rather than actual evidence, and that worsens both your anxiety and your nutritional status. Again, I want to say this isn't your fault too. A lot of clients have gone to a GI, they're handed one sheet of paper going, here's a low FODMAP diet, off you pop. It's a therapeutic diet. You need your hand held through it. There's so many components to it as well. So it's not saying that you actually, I'm saying a lot of the time you haven't been given the skills for success in that, but in the program you do get given that. So this is why working with an IBS trained dietitian is crucial. Someone who knows the FODMAP protocols and also knows the nuances. And as I said, I know we're talking about IBS here, but the dietitians in this team are phenomenal, and they're going to be able to pick up if it's like, I don't actually think this is this. It might be histamine. It might be this. It might be that. They're just exceptional at what they do, and you need that guidance. Okay. So as I said, when you're working with a dietitian, someone who knows those protocols and importantly knows how to reintroduce the food systematically, they use graded exposure. This is what I spoke to before. So they're going to start you with foods that are generally going to be well tolerated at a small dose. So if you have a flare, we're saying to ourselves, well, if I have a reaction, it's going to be a small reaction. So we're working with mindset when you're doing that food introduction as well. And again, dietitians are really, they do have a lot of mindful techniques. So they use the graded exposure, starting with foods that are generally well tolerated. They practice the calming techniques while eating them. They're going to encourage you to do that, and gathering evidence that challenges that fear story. So what we want is, I say to people, you're going to be going through a little period of unpredictability for a future of predictability, as opposed to what you've come from, which is all unpredictability. And yeah, we don't know what's predictable or what's not. So Yes, we actually do encourage you to have an IBS first aid kit or an anxiety first aid kit, whatever you want to call it. But we're not just preparing for the disaster. We're actively teaching your nervous system that eating can be safe. And we're going to show you the roadmap to do that with both food and mindset in mind.
All right, and so the last step of this is self-compassion and connection. I know that might sound fluffy or woo-woo, but it's scientific, it's evidence-based. Most people with IBS or similar gut issues are incredibly hard on themselves. They feel ashamed of their symptoms. They feel like a burden. They blame themselves for not getting better fast enough. Here's the truth. Having gut issues, it's not a character flaw. It's not a choice. And you deserve kindness, especially from yourself. It's part of the healing process. So Jay will explore this final step for us.
Okay, so we're going now to self-compassion. It's one of the things we are obsessed with. If you don't know of Dr. Kristen Neff, she's sort of the queen in this thinking. And it was actually Amy who really introduced me to this concept, our other mindset coach. She sort of really brought me into it. And it's something that it's sort of first step of what we teach clients. So IBS can generally make people feel really alone and isolated and honestly ashamed as well. Bathroom symptoms, food restrictions, the unpredictability, they can trigger a lot of deep shame in people and guilt too. Self-compassion isn't just being nice to yourself. Research actually shows it reduces your IBS symptom severity and improves your quality of life. It has 3 parts, which I've put here. So self-kindness instead of harsh self-criticism. We're going to move to change quicker when we're loving ourselves through it than if we're being awful to ourselves. We're more likely to stay stuck if we've got a really strong inner critic. And we see a lot of clients with sort of strong inner critics. Recognizing that suffering is part of being human rather than feeling isolated, and being mindful of your pain without getting completely overwhelmed by it. Practically, it means reaching out for connection. Social connection is so important. Engaging in activities that bring meaning or just joy, frivolous little things as well. That's great as well. Actively challenging shame when it comes up by reminding yourself this is a medical condition that affects millions of people. It's not a character flaw. It's not a choice. Okay. You're not choosing to have this symptom. So these are some ways that you can lean into the self-compassion. And for some people, it can be really hard. I'm not going to lie. When I started this, talking kindly to myself, I was like, oh my goodness, this feels strange. Now at the end of the day, I'm like, you aced that, babe. Well done. For some people, I say start by writing things on your mirror around, your bathroom mirror or things like that. It's like a muscle. If you struggle with meditation, chances are you're also going to struggle with self-compassion if you've had a strong inner critic that's been there for a long time. And sometimes that inner critic isn't even your voice. Sometimes I say to people, whose voice is that? And it could have been a critical caregiver or a sibling or someone at school. So yeah, we really want to start to challenge that and engage in self-compassion.
It's really quite horrible how we talk to ourselves. If you catch yourself sometime, would you ever say that to a friend or a relative, like how you speak to yourself? Because if the answer is no, if the answer is yes, well, that's another problem entirely about how you.
But what you speak to there, Joe, is really interesting. The more self-compassion you actually offer yourself, the more kindness you extend to other people. Your inner world can also be a reflection of how you treat other people. So sometimes when I'm in the shopping center or someone's having a moment and they're having a big reaction, instead of me getting sort of like caught up in it, sometimes I'm like, and my kids will hear me, I'll be like, oof, they're going through it. They must be having an absolute moment right now, or I'd hate to be in their mind right now, because generally it's an extension of how they're treating themselves inside.
Why is self-judgment like so damaging for healing, you think?
Well, because it's eliciting the judgment, right? The guilt. If we're being critical to ourselves, it's like someone externally being critical to us. But the problem is probably worse because we're actually believing it when we say that to ourselves. So your body is responding to that. So if you're saying to yourself, you are rubbish, you're never going to finish this, you never get anything right, my body straight away feels so heavy. I'm I'm going into that collapse. I can already feel my posture going into it, right? And that is sending signals up the vagus nerve coming back down with those negative thoughts. And it's putting the body in this state of like helpless, hopeless, depressive type state. It would be called our dorsal vagal part. That is not conducive to health. Okay. Everything that stress and dysregulation exacerbates in your body. So that affects your immune system, your hormone function, your inflammatory markers. When we are offering kindness to ourselves, when we are regulating our nervous system, a part of that nervous system regulation of toning your vagus nerve is starting to counter what the dysregulation does. So you will start to see improvements in your immune system. You will start to see improvements in your inflammatory markers as you start to regulate yourself alongside the diet change, right? As you're also growing and changing your microbiome. This is why I love what you do and why you've done it so well, Joe, is because it is holistic. You're working on your microbiome and you're also working on the part that's also going to keep fueling that, which is the mindset and your nervous system. You could do all the work on the microbiome yourself, but if you're doing nothing on your nervous system, if you're doing nothing on the mindset side, I genuinely think it's only going to be temporary if you see those as bigger change.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is why we're always talking about this nervous system topics and modalities, everyone, because if you want to grow older and be healthy and happy and enjoy it as much as you can, this is where it starts, because it is impacting, as Jay said, like immunity, people getting sick a lot, inflammation, and of course there's certain things that, you know, certain medical issues that come up that are out of your control and not your fault, but there's a lot that are within our control, and we want to make sure we're doing everything we can with those aspects. And you know, it's directly related to our gut health and IBS, and it's all
absolutely
more science coming out all the time. It's really fascinating.
Absolutely. And you spoke to a really good point there, Joe. The last thing I want to do is also gaslight anyone here to be like, if you just do nervous system regulation and microbiome, you're going to be healed from everything. That is not what I'm saying. It's not what I'm saying at all. Like, there are some things that are absolutely chronic, but is there a different way to work with it that's going to be freeing and means that you have a better quality of life and well-being? Absolutely. We see it every day. This is why I love my work. We see people that come in and they have no hope. And I say to them, well, you let me hold the hope for you, because I know you're going to feel better in 3 months. I know you may not believe it now, but let me hold it for you, because I see it. I see it every day. And I know that you're going to be getting to a place where you feel so much better. The takeaways here that I'm hoping have come across and wrapping up is, if you take nothing else away from today, remember this: IBS anxiety is completely understandable given what you've been dealing with, and it's also manageable with the right tools. So you're not choosing between managing your gut and living your life when you address both the gut and the brain connection. You can do both together. Small, consistent steps really do add up over time. You know, some people come in and they're like, I don't have the time for this, and they're envisioning that they have to sit down for like 45 minutes or an hour and meditate every day. No, you don't need to. You can take short little 30-second breaks. Sometimes I'm like, anytime you go to the toilet, do some butterfly tapping, you know, like really incorporating it where you can. So small, consistent steps really do add up over time. And remember that you are not alone in this, okay? This condition inherently can be very isolating, and you're not alone in this. There's millions of people that experience IBS, and we've got a really strong evidence-based treatments within this program that we know work.
All right, so let's bring this all together and recap. Remember that IBS anxiety is real. It's not in your head. It's a physiological response tied to your nervous system and that gut-brain axis. And there are 4 key steps to breaking the anxiety IBS cycle. Step 1 is retraining the nervous system. Step 2 is changing the story you tell yourself. Step 3 is building safety around food. And step 4 is self-compassion and connection. And this isn't a quick fix. It takes consistency, but in about 6 weeks of daily practice, you start to see what's called a bioplasticity reset. Your nervous system learns a new way to respond. And when you combine that with the right nutrition support and genuine accountability, so you show up and do it, that's when real lasting change happens. If you're ready to actually implement, not just learn about these things, but actually implement and get hands-on support from dietitians and mindset coaches who specialize in gut health, check the first link in the description or comment Sure Pathway, and we'll send you the details of how our program and process works. Now, it includes both the nutrition side and the mindset side, because we know that one without the other just doesn't work long term. And if you want our IBS Think This, Not That list, which gives you practical reframes for all those anxious thoughts that show up around food and symptoms, that's the second link in the description. So we'll email it to you, and then you can print it out, you can stick it on your fridge, whatever will help remind you. Oh, and if you found this video helpful, do me a favor and hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. It helps us reach more people who need this information, who need to have this conversation. And if you want to learn more about why most gut treatments fail and what actually works long term, watch this next video on the screen now. Hooroo!